Boogie House, Chapter 5, read by the author. The next morning, there were enough grounds in the can to make a single cup of coffee, and I drank it slowly during Sports Center. The Braves looked good out of the gate, but how long the pitching would hold up was a mystery. We didn't have a Maddox or a Smoltz on this year's roster, but maybe we had a couple of half Smoltzes, so I imagine we'd end up losing to somebody in the playoffs this fall. I called the police station and pleaded to speak with DL again. Dara popped her gum in my ear but did what I asked. I gave him the plate number of the truck that had followed me, and he received it without too much prodding. "I hope you're not doing anything underhanded," he said before hanging up. I heard the beginnings of concern in his voice, and I couldn't tell where he was placing it. When I was done with baseball for the day, I read the week's paper. The article in the Junction Examiner spared the case's more grisly details, but not out of respect for the family or anything. It had been penned by a troglodyte on the staff, one zombie walking from check to check on a path towards retirement. And why worry? It was only a local paper in a dying industry with a weekly circulation of hundreds. Maybe hundreds, if they were lucky. The publisher, Wilson Talmadge, could find a backbone whenever the paper needed a pulse, but was utterly willing to compromise on just about every other aspect of the business in every other moment of his life. The byline for this piece of journalism wasn't attributed to Doris Allworth, the only person with any integrity at the Examiner, which was perhaps why the article didn't even mention the name Brickmeyer. It managed to mention calling me a fall-down drunk, but I imagine that took some amount of restraint to do that. Former police officer Rolson McKane said all it needed to say. I filed it all away for later and then went about my day. A detective named Ed Hunter arrived at 10. He stood 6'4" and kept his arms perpetually intertwined across his chest. His blue eyes flickered with what I could only interpret as contempt. For what reason, I wasn't able to say. I joked that I could share a half-size cup of coffee with him, but that I didn't have enough for two people, especially one as big as him. He seemed okay with that joke. We made small talk, but about the Braves and the weather, but after 10 minutes I realized he wasn't leaving until he had something to work with. "What were you doing out at that old shack, Mr. McKane?" he asked. He didn't have a pen or paper, but seemed like he didn't need it. He had these knife blades for eyes, and he stared holes right into me. I stared right back at him, steepling my fingers in my lap and cracking the knuckles. "I like to go for walks, Mr. Hunter," I said. "If you looked it up, you'd see I got a citation for driving under the influence a couple weeks back. Big mess. Hit somebody with my car and everything. So instead of driving, which is frowned on with me awaiting a court date, I like to walk. I ended up over on the Brickmeyer land because I was bored and tired of trekking up and down the same stretch of pavement. Rained for the last 2 days, making a damn fine mess of the earth around here. And you decide to go for a walk." "Uh-huh," he said. He pretended to scratch his chin. "1.5 miles into the woods, no less. What's it like to go through all that straw and mud? You do that for, fun?" "If the occasion calls for it." "Listen," I said. "I have absolutely no problems answering questions. Shit, you want, you can prop your feet up and we can get cozy. But I will not have you patronizing me in my own house. I'm the guy who found the body. That's all. That's it." His ragged smile was meant, I'm sure, to be conciliatory, but it gave off an entirely different vibe. He was enjoying this. "Didn't mean anything by it. Just getting a picture of the situation and the circumstances surrounding your discovery. If I come off as abrasive, it's only because I thought you would understand. It's the routine, you know, cop stuff." At that, I did see his expression soften somewhat. Maybe he saw the truth somewhere in what I was saying. Maybe, but if not, he was good at putting on a show. "Oh, yeah," I said. "Well, I'm no longer with the force, so I understand. I really do. Man's always got to find his way, and sometimes it takes him through the briars before it lands him on the highway, if it ever does." "You've been through the briars very much in your life, detective?" A twitch of the eye, a slight upturn of the mouth. "I reckon you could say that. Youth can be a troubled time. I've outgrown most of what I presume you're still working through." I'll be working off whatever debt I've got for the rest of my life. Somebody up there likes keeping me chained to the grindstone. I see, he replied. The coffee tasted like cold mud, but I drank it with a measured calm while I contemplated my next series of answers. Hunter played it even cooler. What freaked me out was, during the whole conversation, his eyes never left me, not once. At the end of a bitter gulp of coffee, I said, "What has Leland contributed to the investigation? He must be perturbed at a body being discovered on his land." Hunter sighed. As could be expected, he has been courteous to us so far. Inviting even. He's a politician, after all. That's good. I kept my tone even, like a criminal trying to outwit a lie detector test. But I can tell you from our preliminary information that he's not a suspect. Having a body found on your land doesn't make you guilty of anything but being able to afford that much property, a crime I wish I was guilty of sometimes. Ain't that the truth? Ain't it? Anyway, he's been answering questions, all that. He's a friend of law enforcement. I couldn't tell if he was serious. Sure, Brickmeyer paid lip service through a banquet every now and then, but didn't this dude realize it was all for show? The same way Mother Teresa was a friend of poverty, I said. Hunter gave me a quizzical smile but didn't respond. And we got a fabric sample off the body. Didn't come from the decedent, so we're taking a look at it. That all the evidence you get? The crime scene was compromised, he replied. Small-town law enforcement got a little too excited, I suppose, trying to play CSI guys on television. Plus, the rain. Gonna be a wet spring, I said. Tends to wash everything away. Has he given you any trouble? Said anything strange? Brickmeyer, I mean. He said it would be contradictory for him to do anything but walk the line, and he knows that. He's an astute public figure. You could say that again. Do you have a hard-on for this guy or something? I realized I might have been pushing a little hard. Getting a sense of the angles is all. Well, he knows a slip-up right now might cost him down the line. If he plays ball and the right man gets apprehended, he'll come out smelling like a rose. And if he doesn't, if he decides to flex his muscle a little too much, if he tries to be impetuous, instead of a rose, he'll be a turd blossom. Exactly. May I ask why a more than local interest has been taken in this case? Doesn't seem like something the bigger fish would want to bite on. Hunter wiped at his mouth with one hand like he had mayo on it or something. There has been a concerted effort of the part of many state governments to, right the wrongs of the past. I was momentarily surprised. Something like reparations? Oh, nothing like that. No. What has happened is that task forces have been created to investigate hate crimes committed during the 50s and 60s. Wow. It's a workload, but real progress has been made. If an unsolved homicide involved race, then we're taking a look at it. What does that have to do with this situation? Well, it's a sensitive time, what with the political climate and all. This case falls into that very same area. If it turns out that there was some racial motivation for the murder and we're able to solve it, then that will bring positive attention to the cause. It's a win-win politically. You don't seem like the kind of man who would do something for his political implications. Depending on how high you get, there's always a game to be played. Politically, of course. And practically, we're finding out that many crimes once thought to be racially motivated were actually committed by other people, family members and disgruntled lovers and such. Still, though that doesn't lessen the grief, at least it proves beyond a doubt in some cases that simple racism played no part in them. Comforting. Now see, Hunter said, perhaps taking offense for the first time, it can't be looked at like that. A crime is not a crime is not a crime. One murder is not just like any other murder. Absolutely. That's why it's important that the actual cause be determined. Motivation may affect how we look at them from a historical standpoint. It's not a waste of money if it brings closure. The truth is important in these matters. Wouldn't you want the right person to be fingered if you had been killed? That's something I agree with, if the truth really comes out. Hunter shrugged. That's always the variable. We can never be sure if the truth will ever come out, let alone when. Good luck, I said, Hope you find the truth." He stood and headed for the door. His eyes never left me, and the sight of them made me want to shudder. "Well, I reckon we'll see, won't we? Take care, Mr. McKane. I'll definitely be in touch." "Oh, one last thing," he said, stopping at the door. I had stood and was going to close it behind him. "We got an ID on that body. Mother came by and identified him late last night. Name is Emmett Laveau?" I tried not to let on that my blood had gone cold. "His mother is, Janita Laveau." At this, the detective finally smiled. It looked like a man trying to get into a suit he doesn't wear very often. "You got it, sport. The son of the woman you hit with your car is on a slab right now. Keep that in mind next time you talk to me." Without another word, he stalked purposefully to his unmarked car and drove away. I watched through the screen door and then closed myself off from the world for a little while.